等一下，我把林晨瑞的学号打错了。
Edwina，你可以直接改吗？
我换。
那我打成谁？我在干嘛840860，一定是我昨天本来要先打你的名字，然后我打错，然后莫名其妙我把它打成他。好，随时可以开始。好了，好，我们可以开始了。OK，
怎么了？哦，
好，那我就开始了，应该没有什么错吧？是吗？
该没有啊。
好，那我开始了。好，嗯，Hi guys, we are group 4 and our topic is what does it have to do with charisma building? And I'm the group leader. My name is Hamilton. And my members, there are Yang Zhiyu, Lu Boyan, Lin Chenrui, Du Yinshan, Lai Yuquan, Chen Aiyang, and Guo Peiliang. So because our department there are various kind of, sorry, I'm not gonna introduce everyone. And next slide. So basically I'm gonna introduce the introduction of the experiment, and Guo Peiliang is gonna introduce the part 2, and Du Yinzhen is gonna introduce part 3. Next slide. So basically the first part is motivation. We're being told that the whole time we have to maintain a good outfit to let people be willing to tell with us. But we were wondering, is this true, or this is just a stereotype? So we're gonna prove that outfit do affect our 天哪，你跳太快了，我有点宕机。所以我继续吗？
应该继续，可以剪掉吧？
好，那我就继续。So basically, we were just trying to prove this situation, whether it is true or it is just stereotypes. Next slide. So let's see. There are 3 pictures in this slide, and like for us, most of our group member thinks that facial face and the experience appearance。对不起，我们重来好不好？我觉得这样看起来好不专业哦。
好，没关系，就
故意的，
那就直接
我觉得
整个重来。
我们断太多了，对不起，对不起，蔡阳，对不起，我不是故意的，对不起。
然后我觉得，如果你是讲错，然后要重讲话，可能要留一个区隔的时间，就不要哦。那我再重讲一次，然后就直接接下去讲，不然这样他切的那个时间点会很难抓。
哦，你是说他在切那个
对，就可能
影片吗？
你可以说好，那我现
可是
在再
我不知道
重新开始。
他会不会切，你会切吗？我怕他不会，所以我就想说，哦，太棒了，
他会，
太
他说会。
聪明了，好，对不起，对不起，
对，
好，我懂了。
所以就是你在重新开始之前就停个1-2秒，然后再开始讲。
好，
嗯，
好，对不起，我会了，好，谢谢。
他还说可以帮你加美肌。
什么美肌？那你帮我加一下吧。好，谢谢。那我重来哦，各位，对不起，我重来。好，OK。Hi, we are group 4, and our topic is what does it have to do with charisma building? And I'm the group leader. My name is Hamilton. And our group members, there are Yang Zhiyu, Lu Boyan, Lin Chenrui, Du Yinshen, Lai Yuquan, Chen Aiyang, and Guo Peiliang. Next slide, please. So first of all, I'm going to introduce the introduction of the experiment, and Guo Peiliang is going to introduce the second part, and Du Yinshen is going to introduce the third part. Next slide, please. Okay, so basically the first part is motivation. We have been told that the outfit that do affect people, how they see us, or how they decide whether they want to help us or no. So we want to prove that whether this is true or this is just a stereotypes. Next slide, please. So there are 3 pictures on this slide, and you guys can see that the appearance might affect how we look at this person. So let's see the left-hand side. the first of all is a young guy standing in front of the old man, but like we might think that the upper picture might show that the guy at the and behind the young person might be a beggar or whatever like that. But when we change the appearance, we don't think that the young guy is a beggar or whatever is poor. So does outfit really matter? This is just a question that we might have to think about. But basically, this presentation, we just wanted to prove that outfit do affect a person. Yeah, please, next slide. So how to conduct an experiment? First of all, we distribute 6 photos of different people in different dresses into 2 groups, and one is formal and the other is informal. And the second step is that we ask the respondents whether they would give away their line when being picked up by the previous 6 men. And if they do, the third part will be if the respondent are willing to give away their line or whatever contact, they would choose the higher score, and vice versa. The score was within 1 to 7. And the fourth, which is the last part, is that we analyze the survey, confirm whether the formal group get more scores than the informal one. Next slide, please. Let's see a glimpse of our questionnaire. Basically, we just do a question and compare with, we have 6 photos on the page and we have this from 1 to 7 to score for our respondents. Next slide, please.
Okay.
The second part is, I was just gonna introduce Guo Peiliang, and this second part is for Guo Peiliang, and she's gonna tell you what our analysis is.
Okay, so we're in part 2, analysis. We have 6 photos of the men wearing different kind of clothing. For the left-hand side is formal, and right-hand side is informal. For formal, we have number 1, number 4, and number 6. For informal, we have number 2, number 3, and number 5. So these are the results from our respondents. The left-hand side is the formal ones, and the right-hand side is the informal ones. So as you can see that on the left-hand side, for formal results, they have different results, and for the informal ones, they're more like number 2 and 5. They are much more similar, but they also have different results. For our question number 1 to 7, 1 is very unlikely and 7 is very likely. So for formal part, we see that it's much more average, but for informal part, number 2 and 5, most of the answers are very unlikely. Okay. So now this is how our analyze went. So t-test. This method tells us how significant it is between 2 different groups. And p-value, derived from t-test, often applied to reject null hypothesis, which is the probabilities of 2 groups are the same. Generally take 0.05 as a standard. If the p-value is less than 0.05, it means there is a large probability that the 2 groups are not the same and vice versa. So null hypothesis is the probabilities of 2 groups being the same. Every t-test has a p-value. What is a p-value? P-value is usually a percentage and written in decimal. If the p-value is lower than 0.05, it is false and should be rejected. Standard deviation. It shows dispersion of data. The bigger it is, the greater the deviation of data will be. So it's like the variety of values of our experiment. Okay, so from our respondents, we had 113 participants, and 52 of them are males. So this is how we analyzed our responses, and you can check our analysis first. So from our analysis, our p-value is extremely small, 2.2 e to the power of 16. E is a mathematical constant, which is 2.718. And because our p-value is extremely small, there's a great difference between two groups, meaning that the results are different. And on the other hand, the result of mean values show that the score of formal group is higher. And combining these two results, we can learn that the rate of successfully picking up girls for the formal group is indeed higher than that for the informal group. So in conclusion, formal outfit does make it easier for men to pick up girls and get their contact information. This is our error analysis. So let's use the example for our first photo. On our table, the upper row means that values and the bottom row is standard deviation. It shows that figure 1 has lower score than the other two people in the formal group despite being in the formal group. And the deviation our data is bigger. So because we have about half of male and half of female in our respondents, and through analysis we can learn that the dispersion of the girls group is higher than of the boys group. And the main reason for our result is that first, the man in picture 1 seems to be frivolous. Frivolous means carefree and superficial, which may lead to some people's dislike. Number 2, the dressing style of the men is exaggerated, which amplifies the difference between the ones that like it and the ones that who don't. So we're going to the experience sharing.
Okay, so thank you, Cheryl and Edwina, for sharing the first two parts. And now I'm going to be talking about experience sharing, which will include what we learned during the process and the problems we encountered and how we solved them. And so next slide, please. Okay, so first of all, we're going to talk about the problems we faced during the experiment and how we solved them. And first and foremost, the biggest problem of all, which is COVID-19. At first, our experiment was going to be a social experiment where we were going to approach different people outside and practice the charisma techniques that the teacher taught us and try to ask our surveys in person. However, due to COVID-19, we are all regulated to stay home, and so we have decided to change our survey into the form of an online survey. And so next, the second problem we faced was we did not know how to get enough samples. Like, we brainstormed a lot of ideas, and one of them included posting it on pages such as 1092魅力学第四组. However, due to our experience, we believe that posting it on such pages do not really yield that many results or the amount of results that we would desire. So in the end, we decided to just ask as many friends as we can Okay, sorry. 刚刚我手机，但等一下帮我把这个部分剪掉。Okay. So in the end, we decided to just send the survey to multiple friends and ask them to help us finish the survey, and hopefully we would get enough samples for our analysis. And in the end, we ended up with more than 100 samples, so we believe that that will be enough for our experiment. Next slide, please. And next, I'm going to talk about the possible deficiencies and the improvement we can make in our experiment. And the first possible deficiency would be the distinction between formal and informal clothing or clothing styles, because these clothing styles were defined by ourselves, like we discussed in our group, and we did not really ask the objective view of the public. And therefore, it may not be objective or precise enough to determine whether or not this clothing style is formal or informal. And second, our second deficiency would be that although we did cover the face of most of the photos, there are still other non-wearing factors that may affect the results of this experiment. Because since we are talking about our pickup probabilities, people might take into factors such as not only your clothing formality or informality, but also the clothing style or maybe your physical appearance. Physical appearance as in your physical shape. And next, let's talk about if we could redo this or if we had more time to do this, what improvements would we make? The first, talking about the first problem we made, we could probably divide our survey into two parts. The first part being surveying whether this clothing is formal or informal. And therefore, the more people we ask, the more objective our photos will be, as in whether they are formal or informal. And next, to solve the second problem, we could possibly sorry, previous slide, please. Okay, thanks. And so, although the face is covered, the way we can solve this is that probably we can get one of our group members to take pictures in the numerous outfits or numerous styles of clothing, and therefore the physical appearance would be the same, and the person will be the same, and hopefully this will minimize the problem that our second problem, the deficiency that our second deficiency. And that will be it for this part. And next slide, please. And last, let's talk about our gain and inspiration from the experiment. And first of all, we have understood the meaning of t-test and p-value, which Edwina just talked about. And to the untrained eye, this will be very theoretical and very hard to understand. And therefore, we have all had the indulgence to understand the t-test and the p-value, which is from the field of psychology and statistics. And second of all, we've also learned that based on our results of the experiment, formal outfits do have a certain influence on the success rate of picking up girls. And so this is something that the boys have to remember when you're trying to pick up girls. And last but not least, we've also learned how to make the experiment more credible. Because based on our previous experiences, most of the time when you do experiments, you just basically take the results and say that, okay, so most of the people chose likely or very unlikely, and therefore blah, blah, blah. However, in this experiment, we have strived to make our experiment more credible. Therefore, we introduced the t-test and p-values in the previous parts of the experiment. And that is basically all that we've learned. And next slide, please. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay.
阿阳，你有录完吗？我觉得他应该可以剪到15分钟以内。Yes, good. 好，那你现在可以开一下讲话吗？不然你打字，你也打字也可以啊。如果你不想开的话，可以回到其中一页。他说要回到其中一页是什么意思？
哪一页？
你现在回到哪一页？2.3
2.21减16 p-value 那一页。
帮我说他说帮他说一段是什么意思？
哦，
就讲一下这一段的。
那我
而且你们刚没有讲吗？你们刚不是有讲吗？
还是我重新这个一页好了。
他说帮我说一段，那你重讲这一页吧，他应该是要帮你重新接吧，我不知道。
OK，
那就3啊，他直接录你讲吧。
OK。
E means to， 等一下，他
就是他叫你把那一段再重新练一次啦，他应该是要帮你接那一段。
好
E means to time 2那边。
E means 可以开始了吗？
你等他回你可以，你再讲好了。
OK，等一下。OK， E means 2.2 times 10 to the power of -16.
沙阳，你要的是这样吗？好棒！好，沙青，真想打你。